You know, sometimes people look back on their takes and they feel a little bit of regret. I mean, I know as a Chelsea fan, looking back on some of my takes on Cucurella and Caicedo a few years ago when they weren't that good, I do feel a bit embarrassed because they proved me wrong 100%. With that being said, I'm going to double down on a take I made several years ago, which is that Mark McKenzie should never, ever play for the United States national team again. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Blues and Stripes. So yes, obviously a very disappointing result. I do feel like the reaction around this has been a bit hyperbolic, to be fair, which isn't surprising because a lot of the people that are in the media here in America are former national team players that think when they were in the team, we were so much better back then, which is just not true. We were more athletic, but you look at the quality of the players we have now, and it's miles above. So anybody like a Lawless, anybody like a Donovan, guys like that, they are just going to talk up how bad this result is and how it's a sign that we're going to crash out of this tournament, and that's just not the case. Now, first of all, looking at it from Pochettino's side, I do appreciate the fact that he kind of snapped back on a lot of the overreaction. Yes, some people will look at the fact that we lost that last game and say, well, you just killed our momentum. But the fact of the matter is, he played it smart. No injuries to our starting 11. There are a couple players that were on yellow cards that we needed to make sure did not get a second one that would rule them out of the first round of the knockouts. And to be fair to him, part of the problem is that we just don't have the depth. We have a bit of quality in attack, which is why we scored the 2 goals. But you look at our defense and our midfield, we don't have the depth there to go to our second team and still be effective. So that's not really on Pochettino. Now, with that being said, there are a few players, as I've said before, that were left behind that I do want to talk about as far as whether or not they would have contributed this World Cup. I'm hopefully going to have that video out by this weekend, maybe Sunday. And there is one particular spot on the pitch that might have really helped this match if we maybe had another player available there. But I'll talk about that when I get to it. But yeah, looking at the lineup, it all makes sense. Matt Turner in goal, maybe a little bit surprising that he's not been starting this tournament, but it makes sense, final match, not really much in it. Makes sense you would start your backup keeper, and that's what he seems to be for Poch. Scally and Trusty as your fullbacks with McKenzie and Robinson in the center. This was definitely the weakest part of the pitch. Trusty did pop up with the goal, which was nice, but the entire back line defensively was awful. And I'll talk about that a bit more when we get to individuals, but this is what he has as a backup. He doesn't really have any options in defense past Ream and Richards and Freeman. His fullbacks / wingbacks, this is kind of what he has. Maybe he could have played Arfston, but he's an MLS player, so the quality there probably wouldn't have been much better. So yeah, this back four was 100% the biggest problem, but I understand why he did it. He wants to keep the back three plus the wingbacks fresh, especially for Robinson and Dest. They need to have a break, because they're going to be doing a whole lot of running once we get to the knockouts. The midfield as well. This is where we're very weak in that department. You've got McKinney, you've got Adams. Tillman has been okay, but past that, Berhalter is an MLS player. And then Roldan, who was apparently injured, so he wasn't an option, and maybe he would have played a bit deeper and we would have had an actual defensive mid in there. But even with him, he's also an MLS player, so I don't really trust that we're going to get the best quality out of the likes of him and Berhalter, but that's kind of all we have, at least for players who were called up. So that was 100% the weakest part. And the fact that we didn't really look to change much of that. He did bring in Freeman at one point. He brought in Tillman later on. But it still was not enough to make us strong and solid. But again, I understand why. I understand he's giving a break. I understand he's trying to rest some players. But getting into kind of the front four, you had Reyna kind of playing in the center. Way was on the left side. Aronson was kind of drifting, but mostly on the right side. And then Pepe up top. And to be fair, that should be a solid front four. And I'll talk a little bit about individual performances when we get to it. But what I will say is the subs for me probably could have been better. Because while that is a solid front four, you would want to see, hopefully, do something in the attack. It was very obvious, especially at halftime, that the likes of Pepe, Aronson, and Weah were just not providing much. Reyna as well didn't have a great match either, so you could have argued that he might have been subbed, but he also has that potential to do something spectacular, so I understand leaving him on. But like I said, the subs is where I did feel like Pochettino could have done a little bit more. He did bring on Pulisic just to give him a bit of time, which I thought was good. Even though he has been struggling with an injury, it's good to give him just a bit of time to keep him somewhat match fresh before we get into knockouts. Because if you just don't play him at all for 2 matches and then go, all right, now go play a full 90, he's not going to be able to do that. Aronson came off and Dest ended up going up top, which I thought was okay. I think not having Dest as a wingback, playing him more as a wing, I don't think it's the best out of him, because it's more so when he can get up and down the pitch instead of just staying up in the attack. That's where he does some of his best work. But the fact that there was no sub for Pepe, who was just not giving us anything. Again, I'll talk about him more when we get to individuals, but he just was not having a good game. And the fact that we didn't turn to right at all, like I understand resting Balogun, but Haji Wright is right there. And this is what I talked about when we were going into the tournament. We have 3 solid strikers that have had good seasons. So it feels like you could turn to any of them and you could trust them. So if Pepe's not having a good match and you don't want to play Balogun, you still have a third option that could go in who's just come off a great season for Coventry. See if maybe he should be your second option off the bench instead of Pepe. So the fact that he didn't do that, I will say, is pretty disappointing, but maybe there's something I don't know about, maybe struggling with some sort of injury. But yeah, that was probably the only thing that Poch did that I was not a fan of, was not making that switch of the strikers. Everything else, 100% understand. It is disappointing to not win, but we didn't have to. We didn't even need a point. So it's not the end of the world. This is 100% our B team outside of McKenzie. So I'm not sitting here freaking out like some people are going to start doing because they don't really understand how that works. But what it does show, like I said, is the lack of quality in depth. And that is where I do think once we face some of the top teams, once we face like a Spain or a Brazil, that is where we're going to fall apart, because our first team might be able to go head to head, maybe not be as good as a Spain or a Brazil. I think could give them a game, could make it difficult for them. But once those subs start coming off the bench, that's where those teams will beat us more than likely, because the players we have at our disposal past the first team are just not good enough. So getting into individual performances, Matt Turner, like I said at the beginning of the tournament, thought he was going to be a starter for us. I thought he was probably the best of a bad group of keepers. I thought he was going to be at least effective for us in goal, but to be perfectly honest, was not great. He collected a couple of crosses comfortably, which is something he does well, but they had 4 shots on goal and they scored 3 times. I'm not saying all of them were his fault. Really, only one of them maybe he could have done a bit better on, but it's still something you want from your keepers to keep us in the game. Think back to Tim Howard's incredible performance against Belgium. That's what you want out of your keeper. Maybe not on that level, maybe not as many saves as he had to make in that match, but still something along those lines, those saves that you don't expect a keeper to make, then he does. Those are the ones that really propel you forward. And unfortunately, Matt Turner just did not have any of that last night. Scally at right back, didn't see much of anything from him. Getting down in the attack, he just had no answers. His crosses weren't great. Defensively, way too easy to beat him. It really showed that he's just not on this level, unfortunately. He wasn't the worst performer on the pitch, but really didn't show much of anything. And then Trusty on the left side, like I said, he got the goal, which is good. It was very well taken. But defensively, he was also terrible. There were a couple of passes that he made as well that were just giveaways. It was so sloppy. Like he just turned off and kind of had a lazy kick out of the ball, which then went straight to a Turkey A player. So both of them probably better just coming off the bench to be legs more than anything. But from the start, definitely don't trust them. But let's get into the center 2 in defense. And these are 2 that it's really funny because when I was doing my ranking of what sort of impact these players will have in the tournament, these are the 2 that I said I'm going to try not to let my own personal bias against them affect my judgment on them. For Miles Robinson, former Atlanta United player, got to see him live a lot when I was going to the games here, and I thought it was really ridiculous that a player who was young and pretty good for the MLS seemed like maybe he could go and do something with his career, and then he just leaves and goes to another MLS team, and he's been bang average since then. So there is that personal bias of, really? You didn't leave us to go to a better team? You just wanted to stay in the MLS and not do anything with your career? And it's shown. Every time he's managed to get a call up and he's played, he's looked awful as a defender, and last night was no different. He was terrible in there. Completely lost track of runners. Defensively, he was way too weak. His passing's not great. I said before the tournament he was just here because there's no better options. I kind of want to refine that and make an extra tier for shouldn't be here. There's got to be a better defensive option than him. There's got to be a player out there that can do something better than what he showed last night. Because man, I thought he was going to be bad. I didn't think he was going to be that bad. And moving on to his partner, which, like I said in the intro for this video, I had my opinions about Mark McKenzie a few years ago. I pulled actually a couple of tweets that I had made about him. There was a comment I think I made on Facebook that I can't find now because I think it popped up in my memories not that long ago. There's a comment I made about him that basically said like he's nowhere near what we need at the international level. He is not a defender that I trust. He's not a defender that I want to see. I remember somebody gave me a little pushback. This was when he was at Ghent, and they're talking about, no, he's really good. He's not showing it here, but he's got a lot of potential to him because I think he was only maybe 20 at the time. And I just remember thinking there's so much about his game that I don't see him as a good defender. It's not just, oh, he had a bad game. It's he lacks some of the basic things you need as a defender. The awareness as a defender, the strength that you need, the ability to make tackles. There was so much about his game that I'm thinking, he's not a defender. I don't even know if he's a football player, to be honest. And last night just brought it all back. I saw him start. I'm thinking, okay, well, it's been a few years. Maybe he's grown. Pretty sure he's in France now with Toulouse. So maybe he could prove me wrong. And I even said, whenever we were doing the rankings for everybody, I said he's got the potential to perform. Maybe he can show me something this tournament. And he did not. He and Robinson are two awful defenders. Again, this is where it's make or break for this tournament. If we have to rely on either of them, if Ream, Richards, and Freeman are not playing, we're in trouble because this is what we've got. This is the quality that we have past them. It really makes me hope that some of these kids that are going to be watching this World Cup here in America, that are going to get excited and want to start playing, and hopefully will be playing for the national team, some of the more talented players, some of the more athletic players. I'm really hoping we have some kids coming up right now that are going to see defense and decide, I want to be a defender. Because that's part of the problem, especially with how sensationalized the sport is here in America. A lot of the kids are growing up with the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe, Haaland. Those are their heroes. And so they want to grow up and they want to be goal scorers. They want to be in the attack. We don't see a lot of them growing up and idolizing defenders. Like when I was growing up, one of my favorite players, to be fair, when I first saw him was Zola at Chelsea. But as I got a bit older, I started seeing the likes of Terry and Cahill and Azpilicueta, and then eventually Silva a few years ago. Those were the types of players that I really appreciated watching because they were so good at what they did, and it made me want to be a defender. Now, granted, I didn't really do much to try to be a professional. I'm really hoping there were some kids out there like me when I was growing up that are going to be more diligent, that are going to work harder and actually try to break into the national team because we need that. We really desperately need that right now. And another position that kind of needs some work is our defensive mid because, Berhalter, McKenzie, neither of them defensive mids really. McKenzie did okay. I feel like there's more from him though. He's been a very hard worker over these 3 matches. He's done really well to get on the ball, try to create. Defensively, he does work back. He makes some good tackles. But I think overall, there's just something lacking from his game right now. He's not quite clinical in the final third, and that's something that we definitely need from him. And Berhalter, he had a great goal, to be fair to him, but his overall play is just not good enough. A little too slow, a little too weak, gets bodied off the ball a little too easily. His passes aren't consistent enough. So that midfield 2 definitely did not help us either. And it's why Turkey, even though they were not really dominant in possession or anything, every time they had a chance to break on us, it always looked dangerous because our midfield was so easy to pass through and our defense was so easy to get at. That's definitely something that we're going to need to make sure Tyler Adams is fit every single match, because without him in there, I worry about what's going to happen with our defense. But getting up into the front four, this is where, again, looking at the players that are up there, you would expect some good stuff out of them, but unfortunately most of them did not impress. So Weah probably had the worst performance I've seen from him. Just non-existent. Every time he got on the ball, he got bodied off it so easily. Nothing in the final third. Abysmal performance. Aronson, when I did the stats breakdown at the beginning of the tournament, I did see he's not the most clinical up top, but what he does well is he wins the ball back. He's a hard worker. Didn't really do that for us last night. And also on the ball, didn't see much from him. So unfortunately, just not really much from him there. A little bit more effective than Weah. I thought he did create a couple of better chances, but still just not enough. Reyna as well. We know his quality. We've seen what he can do. I don't think he showed it. Barely got on the ball, and even when he didn't really show much creativity. And then Pepe up top, this was his chance to step up and impress, and he didn't. And again, it blows my mind that Pacha didn't look at right and go, all right, get out there. Let's see what you can do now. In my opinion, there were just several chances that Pepe wasted because he's not quite aware. Because he's not turned on, he's not ready to go. And it's disappointing because, again, we've got 3 good striker options. And while I think Balogun has 100% earned the starting spot based on his performances in the first 2 matches, I think having another option to come off the bench, not even for just a striker, but as another option up top, would be great to have. And I don't think Pepe showed that he's somebody we can trust based on last night. So hugely disappointing there. As far as the subs that came on, Pulisic had a couple of moments where he did create some good chances, which you'd expect him to do. And again, I'm hoping this was more so just to give him some minutes in his legs so he's not cold going into the next match. Dest, also, like I said before, I don't think he's a wing. I think he's better as a wing back. When he can get up and down the line, he has a lot more space. So he's just standing up high. I don't think he brings the same quality that he does when he's up and back. Freeman came on and did a little bit defensively. I know a lot of people have been raving about him, especially after the goal he scored against Australia, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think he's our best defender. I think he's quality. He's shown his quality, but bringing him in this match does not suddenly make our defense 10 times stronger. It just makes it a little bit better. And while that last goal was not on him, it's more so on whoever was supposed to be at the back post, because he was basically all alone back there with 2 players. But I think he probably should have done a bit better for the header to get it away. And then the final 2 subs were Tillman and Zendejas. I didn't really see much from either of them, so kind of just felt like maybe just making subs to get some fresh legs out there. Try something a little bit different. So yeah, all in all, it's a disappointing result. Obviously, we want to win every single match. But I think, as I said before, what this does show is the lack of quality and depth. This is where, going into the future, obviously I don't think Poch is going to be here, but for the U.S. soccer program in general, we need to start prioritizing, first of all, getting better defenders, getting better midfielders, but also just trying to build the quality that we have here in our pool of players, so that way we don't have to rely on the likes of a Robinson or a McKenzie or a Scally. You know, we can turn to guys that are going to help us coming off the bench that are still going to keep the quality up near the top level. So yeah, disappointing, not the end of the world. Anybody who's freaking out about it is probably just a sensationalist that wants to create buzz online, so they're going to have all these opinions about this, when in reality probably just trying to create clicks and get attention. So I'm not going to take too much of that seriously. It was kind of funny trying to search through some of my old Facebook comments, trying to find when I had the conversation with the guy about McKenzie, and I was scrolled through some of my comments. I'm like, man, I used to comment a lot. I don't really do that much anymore. I just sort of realized a lot of people, they just want to rage bait. They just want to try to generate clicks and stuff, and I'm not really about that. Kind of gotten sick of it in my slightly older age. Yeah, with all that being said, obviously we've got Bosnia in the first round. We know that now. I don't know if I'll be able to do a review for it because I'm going to be out of town on a family trip, so it might have to be a short. We'll see. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on the game? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future U.S. men's national team reviews. And until next time, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace out.